Hello, fellow seeker. Welcome to the Wordscaper, your quiet corner for gentle reflections, a sanctuary where we can pause and truly listen. Today, let's talk about that familiar hum beneath the surface of our days, that persistent story we carry, often without realizing its profound grip. It's a personal saga that defines us, shapes us, and at times seems to predict our very next step. We live inside this story, convinced it's the whole truth of who we are. But what if this constant playback, this deeply personal biography, is just a melody stuck on repeat, and we've simply forgotten how to change the tune? What if the very pages we cling to are merely reflections of a past that no longer serves the vibrant, evolving soul we are today? Let's walk together for a moment and listen more closely to this persistent rhythm, this quiet whisper of a truth yearning to be heard. Imagine, if you will, that the part of us we often call the ego is like a well-worn book, perhaps with a soft, familiar cover, etched with the marks of many years and countless readings. Inside are all the chapters of our life, the childhood dreamer, with hopes wide and open, gazing at a boundless horizon, the teenager who felt too much, navigating a world of sudden, unpredictable tides where every emotion felt monumental, the student who strived for recognition, for a place at the table, the professional who achieved, building and creating, often under the relentless pressure of expectation, the heart that broke, piecing itself back together in the quiet aftermath of loss, the one who was wronged, carrying a lingering hurt, a silent grievance that aches years later, the one who failed, learning the bitter sting of misstep, the weight of unmet expectations, the one who endured, finding strength in the quiet corners of resilience, believing that sheer will could conquer all. Every moment, every feeling, every memory, meticulously catalogued, highlighted, revisited countless times in the theater of our minds. This book, our personal autobiography, feels as though it's always open within us, and the ego, in its earnest way, seems to be constantly reading aloud from its pages. It's not always turning to new chapters, though. More often, it's revisiting the same cherished or sometimes dreaded passages over and over again. Remember when this happened? It might whisper, conjuring a vivid scene from years ago. This is why you are the way you are, because of that singular moment. This is what you can't do because of that past failure. This is what you absolutely deserve because of that old achievement, or perhaps that old slight. It's a constant narration, a personal biography running on an endless loop. And because this voice feels so intimately ours, so steeped in our personal history, we rarely, if ever, question its authority. We accept its tales as undeniable truths, its conclusions as simply who we are. We build our present around its dictates, and we project its patterns onto our future, convinced that history must always repeat itself. But here's where we pause and gently consider a different angle. When our biography is on repeat, it leaves precious little room for new stories to unfold. It's like being perpetually stuck in the overture of a grand symphony, never quite reaching the movements where new themes emerge, where the orchestra swells with different melodies and harmonies. Think about our world today. So much of it, in subtle and not so subtle ways, actually encourages this repetition, doesn't it? Our online feeds, governed by complex algorithms, show us more of what we've already clicked on, reinforcing our existing views and preferences, creating digital echoes chambers. Our daily routines, while offering a necessary sense of order and comfort, can sometimes feel less like structure and more like deep, unyielding grooves, difficult to deviate from. Our conversations often, almost unconsciously, drift back to familiar complaints, to well-rehearsed triumphs, or to old wounds that seem to reopen with each recounting. We grow deeply comfortable, perhaps even unwittingly defined by the stories we've already lived, the roles we've already played. The ego, in its profound desire to keep us feeling safe, consistent, and in control, actually thrives on this repetition. Predictability for the ego is paramount. It knows the plot twists. It anticipates the reactions. It's a highly efficient, though sometimes rigid, system for maintaining a steady, recognizable sense of identity. It constantly seeks external validation for its existing narrative, often subtly pushing away or even actively resisting anything that might contradict its established story. If your personal biography includes the line, "I am a shy person, prone to retreating," the ego might gently, almost imperceptibly, steer you away from moments of spontaneous connection or bold self-expression. It will amplify any small discomfort, rationalizing it as proof of your intrinsic shyness. If the story says, "I struggle with big decisions, I always make the wrong choice," it might amplify every doubt, making a clear, confident choice feel utterly impossible, reinforcing that old, limiting belief. It's important to remember, fellow traveler, this isn't about the ego being wrong or bad. It's simply doing what it was designed to do: create a consistent, coherent sense of self in a complex world. It's a marvelous mechanism of personal history, but consistency, without our conscious awareness, can subtly transform into confinement. It can take the vibrant, ever-evolving journey of our lives and turn it into a single, well-worn path, a track from which we rarely deviate, even when new, verdant landscapes call to us from beyond the familiar. We become so focused on the past terrain that we miss the unfolding present. From a Zen or Buddhist perspective, there's a quiet, liberating wisdom that suggests our self isn't a solid, unchanging thing at all. It's more like a flowing river, constantly changing course with the landscape, or a shifting landscape itself, subtly reformed by the winds and the rain. They gently invite us to see that what we call self, our thoughts, our feelings, our very identity, is largely a collection of experiences and beliefs that we mistakenly cling to as permanent. This resonates deeply with the idea of the ego as a biography on repeat. Consider the profound notion of anatta, often translated as no self or not self. It's not about denying that you exist or that you are a unique individual with your own experiences. Rather, it's about understanding that there's no fixed, unchanging, independent you that stays precisely the same from one moment to the next, like a single, solid statue. What we experience as self is a dynamic interplay of many elements: our body, our sensations, our perceptions, our mental formations, our consciousness, all constantly moving, arising, and passing away. If the ego is constantly replaying the same biographical tape, then our path to a different experience, a path to true liberation, isn't about forcefully destroying the tape recorder or violently ripping the tape out. It's about simply not pressing play when we hear the familiar hum, or when we notice the old narratives beginning to spool out again. Or perhaps more accurately, it's about recognizing that we already have the remote control in our hand. We simply haven't realized our power to choose which narrative to engage with. Imagine your thoughts and feelings, including the ego's persistent stories, as clouds passing through a vast, boundless sky. You can observe them, acknowledge their shape and their passing, perhaps even appreciate their temporary form. But you don't have to get on every cloud and let it carry you away, especially not the storm clouds of old regrets. or the fluffy white clouds of self-congratulation. The ego's repeating story is simply one of these clouds, a fleeting formation in the vastness. It will appear and it will pass. And when it does, what remains is the clear, open sky itself, that expansive, fundamental space of your true nature, unburdened by repeat narratives, always present, always pure. This sky is not empty. It is full of potential, ready to hold whatever arises without clinging. Your true self, the deepest, most authentic part of you, isn't a static book. It's more like that flowing river we just imagined. The ego's biography is like the collection of pebbles and stones the river has gathered over its long journey, shaping its visible banks and even its current. But beneath those pebbles, beneath the surface appearance, the water itself is ever moving, ever fresh, constantly adapting to the landscape it flows through. It is never the same river, yet it is always the river. When we are caught in the ego's repeat mode, we're often identifying with those pebbles, with the riverbed's history, with the memories of past currents, rather than the living, flowing water that is always here, always now. We are identifying with the memory of the current, rather than the current itself, the vibrant, dynamic flow of our present existence. To gently challenge this status quo, to offer a different perspective, is to quietly acknowledge these profound truths. Your past does not solely define your present. While every experience certainly shapes the contours of our being, they do not have to imprison us within fixed patterns of thought or behavior. The lessons remain, but the chains can fall away. Your perceived flaws are not your ultimate truth. They are simply aspects that appeared in a certain chapter, perhaps for a time, not the entire unfolding story of who you fundamentally are. They are fleeting shadows, not the light itself. Your achievements don't make you inherently better or worse than others. They are moments of experience, specific outcomes, not the fundamental measure of your enduring worth or your boundless potential. To identify solely with them is to limit the vastness of who you truly are. This shift in perspective, this gentle loosening of our grip on the old narrative, offers a profound sense of liberation. It means that the next chapter of your life doesn't have to be a mere continuation of, or a fixed reaction to, the last. It can be something entirely new, something unexpected, something fresh. It can be authored not by the worn pages of your past, but by the deeper, unfettered wisdom that resides within your soul, always present, always ready to guide. So, how do we gently, kindly, turn down the volume on the ego's repeating biography? It begins with a compassionate awareness, a quiet observation of our inner landscape, approached with a spirit of gentle curiosity rather than harsh judgment. First, just notice the loop. Pay attention to the recurring stories you tell yourself, especially those worn-out narratives about your perceived limitations or past failures. Notice the familiar emotional sensations that accompany them. When a familiar, worn-out narrative appears, perhaps it's the story of not being good enough or always being behind. Simply acknowledge it. Ah, this is that old chapter playing again. No harsh judgment, no critical self-talk, just simple, compassionate recognition. This act of noticing creates the first crucial bit of space, a subtle widening in the otherwise tightly woven fabric of your thoughts. It's like stepping back from a painting to see it more clearly, rather than being pressed against the canvas. This small act of observation is a powerful first step in reclaiming your role as the observer, rather than merely the subject of the story. Then, create space for quiet. The ego often thrives on constant mental chatter, on the busyness of thought and the incessant need for answers. Let's invite moments of stillness into our day, even if they are brief and imperfect at first. This isn't about achieving a perfect state of void, but about simply allowing. Whether it's just a few minutes of quiet, conscious breathing, focusing gently on the rise and fall of your chest, or a slow, deliberate walk in nature without any digital distractions, allowing your senses to truly absorb the rustle of leaves or the feel of the earth beneath your feet, or simply observing your immediate surroundings, the texture of a wooden table, the warmth of your mug in your hands, the distant sound of city life, without internal commentary or labeling. In these gentle spaces, when the external noise subsides and the internal conversation softens, the ego's voice begins to recede, becoming a whisper rather than a shout. This is when a deeper, more expansive wisdom has room to surface, like still water revealing what lies beneath its surface, reflecting the sky above. It's in these moments that we can reconnect with the quiet knowing that doesn't need words or narratives. Next, gently question the script. When a strong, fixed statement about yourself arises, particularly one that feels limiting, heavy, or self-deprecating, like, "I am always unlucky," or "I am never good enough," or "I always mess things up, this is just who I am," quietly, curiously ask, is this absolutely, undeniably true right now, in this very moment? Or is this just a line from a very old script I've been handed, a narrative I've internalized without question, perhaps even since childhood? This gentle inquiry, this mild skepticism towards the ego's pronouncements, can create a helpful distance. It allows you to see the thought for what it often is, just a thought, a fleeting mental construct, rather than an absolute, unchangeable truth etched in stone. This subtle act of questioning begins to loosen the ego's grip, creating flexibility where there once was rigidity. Finally, embrace the flow of change. Remind yourself and allow your entire being to truly feel that thoughts, feelings, external circumstances, and even our very sense of identity are always in motion, always impermanent. Nothing is fixed. Just as our physical body changes over time, cell by cell, shedding and renewing, so too does our mind and spirit. You are not precisely the person you were 5 years ago, or even 5 minutes ago. That previous version of you served its purpose, lived its moment, and has now gracefully receded into the past, leaving behind only the lessons it carried. This beautiful, inherent fluidity, this constant, gentle becoming, is your profound freedom. It means you are never truly stuck in the past or defined solely by what has been. You are always in the process of unfolding. In ancient texts like the Bhagavad Gita, there's a powerful and timeless idea that speaks to this very point, resonating deeply with our discussion. Action without attachment to the fruits of action. Karma yoga. Often, when we're deeply identified with the ego's repeat mode, our actions are heavily influenced by the echoes of past successes or the deep-seated fears of past failures. We engage in life, we perform our duties, we strive for goals, but with an intense, almost desperate attachment to a specific outcome. An outcome driven by what our biography tells us we should achieve, or what we must desperately avoid to preserve that narrative. We find ourselves constantly calculating, strategizing, and pushing, not always for the sake of the action itself, but for how it will reflect on our ego's story. The Gita invites us to engage with life fully, to do our best, to act with diligence and skill, but then to release our grip on the results. This is a profound challenge to the ego, which so often defines itself by these very outcomes, building its entire story around them. The ego thrives on the applause for success, and recoils from the sting of perceived failure. But when we can act without this heavy attachment, when we can offer our efforts without rigidly demanding a particular return or outcome, we're suddenly freer. We're able to respond to the present moment with greater spontaneity, clarity, and genuine wisdom, rather than being dictated by the echoes and anxieties of the past. We become less concerned with how the action looks in our personal story, less concerned with whether it will reinforce a positive biographical entry or avoid a negative one, and more focused on the inherent rightness or purity of the action itself, performed for its own sake, for the simple joy or necessity of the act. This timeless spiritual wisdom gently encourages us to step off that repeating cycle of striving for external validation or avoiding external judgment, a cycle the ego so desperately craves and perpetuates. It liberates us to simply be and do with a quiet courage, without the crushing weight of the past clinging to our every move. So, fellow seeker, what echoes are you hearing in the quiet moments? What old stories are you perhaps clinging to, mistaking them for the entire boundless volume of your vast potential? The freedom we seek isn't about erasing our past or even discarding the worn pages of our biography. It's about recognizing that the binding of that old book no longer holds us captive. It's about understanding that while the story has been told, you are the one holding the pen now. Not to delete what was, but to begin a fresh page, to listen for the quiet hum of the present moment, and to allow life's true, unscripted melody to guide your hand. This is the quiet courage of living beyond the loop. This is the gentle unfolding of you. May you find peace in the stillness and freedom in the ever-present moment, recognizing the infinite possibility that awaits beyond the repetition.